guys?
Great.
Patty Kern. How are you? You guys doing all right?
Yes.
Yeah, I assume so. All right, would you guys bow your heads and I'll start? Heavenly Father, for the grace that has been shed in our hearts and moved in our lives, we thank you. We pray that your Spirit would bless and guide and open up our conversations tonight so that they would be fruitful and surprising. Just as you have been useful to us, we pray that you would help us be useful to you and your gospel. And all of God's people say, Amen. All right, so we're going to start tonight with a little review on what you have or may have not or should have read. I hear from a number of people that you guys love the Red Book, find it light, accessible, easy to understand, not dense at all.
Could you get it a little darker? All relative.
So, really the book is all about, like, hey, it looks like a textbook. It will, like, buttress everything Dennis and I would have said anyway. So it's not just our opinion. It looks like this comes with expert backing. So that was the first reason to have you guys look at the book. But I just want to go over what you guys should take away from that. So the big picture of the last chapters of Keller's book and the beginning chapters that we've asked you guys to read is that the gospel is a message. It's an announcement that creates around it a movement of people. And that movement, everything that movement is about and does, should be in submission to and in service to the message. That's the big takeaway. And that's the takeaway from the Andy Stanley chapter we put out for you last week too. We have, like, we're about one message, and everything we do should complement that. Any questions? Moving right along. At the first reading you guys had, Keller talks about movements, how movements have a compelling single vision. Movements know when they've succeeded. They know what they're aiming for, and they know when they've crossed the finish line. The vision that movements have is well-defined enough and singular enough that it calls out in people sacrificial commitment. And so a movement is not something where the primary question someone would ask is, how can you serve me? How can my needs be met? But the movement instead is so compelling that you want to sign on board. How can I serve? How can I help someone else? That's what a movement does. And because in a movement, because the goal is so compelling, there's a freedom to a movement that allows for new ideas to pop up, new leaders to pop up, because you're not worried about safeguarding anything, you're worried about looking forward. Versus an institution which is held together not by vision but by procedures and rules. Rather than, so like an institution doesn't have one, like it might have an official mission statement or an official vision statement, but functionally the mission is whatever all the groups within the institution say is their mission. And those may or may not overlap at all. And eventually the mission becomes serving the needs of the constituents, not looking outside itself. And therefore change and new ideas are discouraged or overcome by the status quo. Future trends are ignored. Kosher, everyone understands? Like it's cliff notes, but even shorter.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, one of the things that you had told me at the beginning, and one of the things that I had to read, this
Yes.
manual. that somehow that there was a,
That you got to read.
yeah. That there was an equation basically in here, and it said, you know, number of years a church has been around, which would equate to, we've now become not a movement but an institution, and so we are less effective. I can't find that.
Okay.
So
I
at
can
what
put that to you.
point, does the entity become a institution instead of a movement?
I can't remember the exact numbers, but thank you for pointing that out. I don't know if we talked about that, but in that manual that Corey talks about, there's a very precise kind of equation that you can do. If you have X number of churches, you find out their age, you can pretty accurately estimate how effective they are at reaching people. With each decade of a church's life, the number of people they're able to reach who are new Christians, not just by transfer or children coming up to the church, that it just dissipates rapidly. And so after like the first 15 years of the church's life, it starts looking inward and it gets less and less effective unless it's intentional about not doing that. So I'll find the actual thing.
Okay.
Great. All right, so how do you move from being an institution to a movement? Keller talks about establishing grace renewal dynamics, which is kind of a convoluted way of saying that you cannot assume that the people sitting in the pews and who have been sitting in the pews for years, you can't assume that they're Christian. You can't assume that they know the faith. You can't assume they've ever actually been converted to Christianity. They might be cultural Christians. They might not be able to articulate the faith. You can't assume that. And so you have to intentionally reteach what the gospel is and call people to give their lives to it. Step 2, he says, is to plant a church because that forces churches to decide what is and is not our mission and focus. Step 3, he says, is to establish a missional core of the church, a key group of people who have common vocabulary and know what's important. You're the guinea pigs for that. And then lastly, to hold a season of vision renewal. And what he means by that is you intentionally go and look at who your community is like now, and you organize yourselves around meeting that. So you look at the 22308 zip code that we're in, and you don't. So you're not basing your ministries based on what was that zip code 50 years ago when the church started, but who is it now? And you revision for your community. So what's the gospel? I gotta really you love the book, right?
I love it. Yeah, I'm still looking for pictures.
The movie version will be out next time.
I hope.
So you can define the gospel in a lot of different ways. The New Testament uses lots of different metaphors, lots of different language, and Tim Keller goes through every single nuance of it. And I know that can be laborious. Basically, like in a nutshell, Paul summarizes it from 2 Corinthians, and Dennis and I both like this, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself and has entrusted to us the ministry of reconciliation. I think that's a definition that all the other definitions can fit into. It's not the only one, but it's the one I like most. So that's our message. And how we define success as a church then is, are people being reconciled to God? Are new people who don't have a relationship with God beginning that? Are their lives being reconciled as a result? Is there healing and change going on in their everyday practical lives and relationships as a result of their faith? And then are those people being engaged in the wider world as, Paul said, ambassadors, as messengers of that message? If those three things are happening, that's how we define success, ideally, as a church. And then just to unpack the book and how you guys are organized and what we're doing, we thought it'd be helpful. So the 3 sections of the book are Gospel, City, Movement. And so the gospel, that's the message of reconciliation. The city, he uses a city because he's in New York, but it's the community, that we're called to address and to serve. And the movement then is the actual mechanics of how we do that, the ministry that's entrusted to us. Any questions yet? And so we've taken those 3 movements, and that's why we organized you the way we did. And so communication and worship teams are talking about how do we communicate and articulate and express this message for a given context. The community team at Corey is looking at all the demographics and stuff. That all falls under the section of the city, and the movement is the resourcing that Steve is in charge of. How do we organize staff and lay people to accomplish this mission? So that was kind of dry, boring, but now you don't have to worry that you didn't read the book or like it. I can't promise that we're going to do clip notes every time.
What is this based on as well?
Exactly. All right, so I have a little quick video for you to
Yeah,
watch.
check the sound up just a sec.
It's only 2 minutes long. And I guess we'll time. So this is a video that was presented within a speech that Adam Hamilton, who's a well-known pastor in this church, presented to General Conference, which is our entire global denominations conference that happened this past spring. So he presented these are the numbers, these are the trends, this is the temperature of the denomination, these are the changes we need to make. And over the course of that speech, which was not well received, because he compared himself to an oncologist that has to tell you you have cancer, and no one wants to hear that they have cancer. But this was a video that he showed in the middle of that. It's only like 2 minutes long. So it's a French film. It starts. Dramatic pause. I think it was like 42.
I want to leave you with a picture of what the church looks like, what the United Methodist Church looks like in the future if we don't act.
It's buffering, it's not going to roll with screen.
And now we'll go on to the call to action. Please welcome Dr. Adam Hamilton.
42-20.
Where?
I think it was like 40-20 or 42-20. Sure. Elaine said 40-20.
Brothers and sisters, doesn't it make sense to focus our resources and our energy in the same direction? To be working together toward the same goals. I want to leave you with a picture of what the church looks like, what the United Methodist Church looks like in the future if we don't act.
I'm Marcy Strode. I was a member here at the former Melrose United Methodist Church until its final service here on, I believe it was June 13th of 2011, and then acted as a conservator until the church was recently sold. The church started in 1888 on this site in a tent. It was started by the Reverend Nathan Barrett, who was originally a circuit rider for the Methodist Church. This is the new sanctuary. It was built in 1929. Just took my breath away from the moment I first walked into it and continues every time I walk into it. At its heyday, well, the church would be full, I think probably 600 people. It was known as the rich white people's church. And it really was. But the neighborhood changed. A lot more immigrants. This neighborhood is a melting pot. We have so many needs. Single parenthood, poverty is a big one. At different times, people had mentioned things that were so helpful that never got put into place. And it makes me sad that opportunities were missed years and years ago. We just kind of spun our wheels a lot. We didn't have the money to get programmed. The building was a drain. We just kind of hemorrhaged members. The church that bought us, they're giving themselves a new name with the move to the new church. It's going to be New Beginnings Apostolic Church. hopefully, it's going to be a congregation that will meet the needs of the neighborhood. I still have keys to the church, and I'm going to, when I finish the last few odds and ends of the things I have to do here, I'll leave them on the pastor's desk, come in and have a big cry, and then walk out.
This could be our future as a denomination in the United States.
General comments. So the idea is that churches start and grow because they're asking certain questions about the community that they're in, and that churches decline and die because they stop asking those questions. Does that make sense? So all right, so with the category like movements versus institutions, like, can you hear that in there? Like, what would you point out as evidence?
Didn't adapt to the neighborhood that was around them, from the rich white people church to immigrants coming in with special needs and childcare and single parents, and they didn't adapt.
Okay.
They were inward. Yeah, they weren't outward.
Okay.
Burdened by the building.
Burden by the building. What else? Anything else?
Backward looking. They really knew the history, but they didn't know the future.
Dennis loves you for just saying that.
Didn't really know the present, because if they knew the present, they would have seen the neighborhood around them.
Mm-hmm.
So they had blinders on.
So how did the church start? Did you guys hear that?
Circuit rider.
Yeah. So like a circuit rider is like antiquated Methodist term for a missionary. Okay. So it like, and it's not that like a church isn't like feasible in a community, right? Because I mean, it's not turning into like an art gallery, like another church bought. Like, so what do you think are the things that church would do for like the new church?
Have programs for people right around them.
Such as, like real specific.
Child care for any United Methodist Women type meeting. For
Okay.
the single moms to come.
Already taking help with food closet.
Okay. So you get your regional service.
So Head Start.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe foreign language service, depending upon the flavor of the community.
Anything else? Good. So, blah, 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 blah. All right, tonight, don't hold your breath. We have a special guest star. Her name is Becky Connell. Becky, would you get a chair and come right up here? You guys know Becky? Sorry. All right, so Becky.
Yes.
You guys all, I asked you, you know her, you all said yes, right? Yeah, okay. So she's the business manager here at the church. Becky also attends a large Baptist church in Alexandria. And so she brings like the best of both worlds to Aldersgate. And so first, Becky, I just want to like put you on the spot and ask you, what is your church's vision?
Touching God, touching people.
Okay.
You
What?
have to speak up so we can hear on the.
She said touching God's touching people. All right, so how does your church know when it has succeeded?
We have maturing disciples, glorifying God, and serving the unreached.
And does your church evaluate everything you do according to whether it helps that?
Absolutely.
And if I asked you to pray right now in front of everybody, would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to that?
Yes.
So, he asked, does your church evaluate whether they're meeting that mission? Is that some type of a measurable, your answer was, we're reaching untouched people. Is that measured by, we have seen a 20% increase in the number of people that don't go to church that now go to church here? Is it something that's measurable that the church does?
Well, some of it is not, we're not looking at what's just coming into the church, it's where we're going. We do 10, 15 mission trips a year to unreached people groups, like in Turkey and a lot of the Asian and Middle East area, Central Asia mostly is where we go. So we're out after there's 1.7 billion people in the world that have never even heard the name of Jesus, and that's where we're at headed.
Yeah, don't feel like I'm testing you or anything.
That's all right.
I just want to try to nail this down.
It's not like I'm
So-
going to share.
So your church does 10 mission trips a year. Is one of the measurable metrics of are we succeeding as a church? Of our 10 mission trips a year, is the number of people that are going on those mission trips going up? Is the number of projects that we're doing when we go on the mission trips increasing? Are those things captured and then communicated as here's evidence that we are succeeding as a congregation?
Yes, but it's not just the mission trips. I mean, like for instance, we have, as of beginning of this year, we have 965 people in Sunday school on a weekend. And, well, there's 2 services, so, and we have 1,200 in the service. So those numbers are continually growing. But, and those, we have services Sunday night, we have all kinds of classes Sunday night, we have classes Wednesday night, there's Bible studies in people's homes, the youth are out 4 or 5 nights a week too, they can have places to go, classes to be involved in. So it's constant education of the people for God's glory. And that's the main thing, is making sure He's glorified in anything we do. So we serve a lot of areas in Alexandria. We're building together Alexandria. We've worked with them. We did 5 houses last year. We're doing 5 this year, this summer, and we just raised $11,000 for that in one night to move that forward. We work with the homeless, not the homeless, well, those two, but teenager mothers. That's a big ministry for us too, is to take care of them and make sure that they get, we bring them into dinners on Wednesday nights, and help them make sure they get their kids clothed and diapers and whatever they need. Help them when you can go to T.C. Williams, recruit them from there, and we have a fellowship with them. So there's.
But aren't measures of performance and measures of effectiveness more of a institutional thing as opposed to mission, where we should be helping? I mean, I think we would use those tools to decide, hey, this is working. Where in fact, it really shouldn't matter so much if that's working, as long as we've helped one person or we've helped 10 people. It shouldn't matter as long as we've helped someone. And if we will always be trying to live so that we are reconciled with the Lord, there will always be sin that we will try to be reconciling for or helping others. Is it so important that we have measures of performance and measures of effectiveness that are more of an institutional way as opposed to missional way?
So I would say you can tell what a church's priority is based on what it measures. So I don't think it's the case that you shouldn't measure. I think it's the case, like, you should be measuring how many people are we serving, how many people are we baptizing, teaching the faith to, how many people are we engaging in worship. Yeah, but I mean, I get what you're saying too. If I asked, all right, so Becky was able to do this, and the average person just in the hallways of her church would be able to do that too. If I asked you all, or if I asked a random person at Aldersgate what Aldersgate's mission is, what do you think the response would be?
That was the part that I was touched by, but Becky, that you were able to say so much. This idea about understanding the main thing that you do, why you do it, how you do it, and what the outcome is. I think you're right. I think that to see most people in the congregation probably can't do that, right? If the church isn't really adopting a sort of movement, right?
Yeah, so
we should all know
that. What is our mission? How do we define success? Do we evaluate based on that? And are you able to pray? Those 4, maybe the prayer thing would be what people could do. And even then, you're talking, I would guess, a sixth of people in the congregation, maybe. So anyway, I wanted to ask Peggy those questions, but I really wanted because she has experience in a large church and she's on staff here, to kind of share what her diagnosis of Alders Gate is like. Because tonight is all about, we can't just assume everything Alders Gate does is A+, and then go try to replicate that somewhere else. So I've asked Becky to share kind of like what her perspective has been like working here. And I told her this is a nice, kind group, and no one's going to be angry. And you can stop recording after this. So go for it.
There's too many meetings for one thing, way too many committees. And it seems that what I run into is a lot of times the committee or the meeting itself is more important than what comes out of it. If you make a decision, that seems to be the end of it. It's never implemented. You made a nice document, you got it. And that's too much time wasted in that kind of stuff. Too much bickering about little nitpicky things that don't matter. I've run into that a lot. I don't feel a spirit of unity here that I do in my own church. And I keep thinking, okay, the spirit's got to be here somewhere. I know it's here because I haven't seen it in individual people, but I don't feel it as a group. And that's, it's interesting to me. I think, I don't know where else we want me to go. It just seems very fragmented. And I don't want to say religion is, I mean religion is man-made rules, but faith as itself, the love of God, doesn't come out to me as number one here. It's an afterthought. It's something that it's more important to be here, and the building itself seems to be more important than the people in it, and that's really concerns me. So I don't see the relationships that I do in my church. I mean, everybody's welcoming all the time, and if somebody's got a problem and they work together to solve it, then it's not bickering about that's not fixing my problem. It's a lot more reaching out to other people, not only in the community, not only in the church, but in the community and the world. I know that when we started looking at even the campaign, I had an awful lot of people come up to me and say, well, we need the money to go here. There are just too many people here that get cared for. Well, yeah, but that's not the point of the church is outreach to make new disciples. And I don't feel that here. So, is that enough?
So it's not easy to come and like speak the truth to people who pay your check. I mean, this is a good thing. So yeah, ask your questions.
Yeah. Do you have any positive impressions?
That wasn't her assignment, but yeah, you can say it. And then, God, I hope you have some.
It's a nice looking group.
Yes, I mean, I've met some people here that are just fabulous and that really do care, about what happens. And I think that they're just overrun with Methodism itself. I just, there's too much bureaucracy and too much stuff over the top of everything that we can't get down to what a church is supposed to be. And so I think I think there's willing people, but they haven't been pulled together. And I'm hoping you guys are it, because I think, I'm excited to see this happening. I think there's a lot of possibility here. And you guys uniting can do wonders in changing the whole atmosphere.
Do you have clearly, or does your church have clearly defined expectations of committee chairs? Do they sign up for 2 years? Do they sign up for as long as they feel like?
No, they rotate.
Responsible to provide a meeting summary back to the church?
Absolutely.
Because then that would provide a history of, is this group growing, is this group implementing what they decide?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
kind of stuff. So you do have guidelines for committee chairs?
Absolutely. There aren't a lot of them, but there are there's a worship committee, there's an executive council, it's like your church council kind of thing. There's deacons.
Well, let me ask a sort of related question, but when people are new, come into the church new, how do they learn the culture? How do they learn the expectations
everybody tells us as they come through the doors, what they feel first is the love. They really feel loved by everybody in there. Lots of people will come up to them and say, hello, I haven't seen you before. Are you new here? Maybe you're just attending a different service, but they're not afraid to talk to them and open up right away and make them feel welcome, invite them to a Sunday school class, get them connected right away so that they have their own small group that will take care of them. The pastors, number one, we have 7 pastors, not 2, so that alone makes a difference, but we don't rely on the pastors. They're giving direction. They give direction, that's it, and it's up to us to implement the stuff.
So they're like coaches?
Yes.
So promoting, it sounds like your church really promotes fellowship and warmth and unity with all the members.
Yes.
And that is something not, how does your church do that? How do they learn that? How does that sustain through new members, and not just when they come in the door and their families, but through committees and bureaucracy and when everybody has their own agenda, and how do they keep that together? Is it through prayer? Is it through times together?
We spend a ton of time in prayer.
Retreats, whatever, yeah, okay.
A lot of time in prayer. Anytime that we go on a mission trip, for instance, we prayer walk the whole place first. So there's constantly prayer walking. We prayer walk the church, and before service, there's people who come early to do that. And so we're constantly in prayer. Our belief is you can't do anything without prayer. You try to do it with people themselves, and you're going to fail. So we have to have God's blessing first. And so that's a huge thing. And then all the small groups, when you get people to connect right away into Sunday school classes, we call them Bible fellowship instead, but if there's smaller groups, either by age or by, you're like a single parent, that kind of thing, and those different groups are all formed. And so they have other people in their same group that they can go to with problems and things, and everybody in the church has a deacon. So I'm a deacon in the church. I have 17 families under my responsibility. So if anything happens to any of them, whether they're in the hospital or they're ill or whatever, I take control of making sure that they get their meals, and each person takes care of their own
So
section.
that's that personal
Yes.
aspect that then keeps kind of over everybody, rather than, because even the small committees that you have and the small groups can get bureaucratic over time. So it's like, how do you keep that personal fellowship where people are really more about the love of God and caring for each other than, and then secondly, so I think
Yeah, that's one thing. Spend a lot of time in the Bible. When you read the Word, you're gonna.
Isn't it the minister's job to read it and then tell you?
How do you educate people on the mission statement? How do you keep the people focused on it? Like, I'm assuming there's not a big banner as you walk in the door.
Well, actually, there's a big screen.
in the bulletin, every
It's
week.
in the bulletin every
every
week. It's up on the, it's the first thing you see when you walk in the door in front of the church.
Because that's nice, because it reminds you.
It's on our sign.
Well,
It's everywhere. It's on our,
There's nobody that can answer that question.
right. Not that I've ever remembered.
Becky, just kind of top line, how does the demographics of First Baptist compare to the demographics here? In other words, are the congregations roughly the same in your estimation in terms of the age, where you draw from?
We're
Are you
pretty-
younger, older, the same, or?
We're spread out across the whole thing, but we do have a lot of families right now. We have.
Is it your sense that you might be skewed younger, or?
Not by much. I mean,
Okay, all right.
we've
So
got,
it's the
we have
same.
75 people that have been in the church 50 years or more.
Okay, all right.
So once a year, we celebrate the people who've been there
Is
50
this
years.
Old Town or West End or?
It's up on the hill.
King Street, up on the
King
hill.
Street.
Oh, okay.
Just inside 395.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the new member class. Do you have any type of like evangelism or way that you teach your members how to speak about their faith or how to share that?
We do that a lot.
I mean,
From books like Share Jesus Without Fear, that was a good one that we did as an entire church did together. And the Sunday school classes did it as well. So everybody had the same thing to talk about at the dinner table then. So everybody was sitting the same thing.
So they get practice.
Yes. Yeah.
Sharing, speaking the words, the vocabulary.
Yeah, there's something like that. Every year we do something like that, at least once.
Some more methodical methods.
How much?
Sorry. No, it's good to hear that.
But if you're going through the apparently read book, the whole idea is center of church, you've got to find a balance between institution and movement. There's got to be elements of both of those things
Right.
for it to work.
The relationships are key. You've got to make the relationships. You've got to talk to people and find out what they're about. It's got to be about them first, not you.
And what you're talking about too is a continuation of the journey. Once you are a member, there's an expectation that you're going to continue your faith journey
Absolutely.
through study,
Absolutely.
through mission work, whatever, being involved in growing,
Yes.
and at every level, whatever age too.
Like what, I mean, right now, I'm facilitating a class on Sunday nights called Perspectives. We meet 3 hours every Sunday for 16 weeks, and it's on missions.
You for 3 hours. Dennis, do you want to add anything to give that you cover for the online viewers?
You know that frog is a cold-blooded animal that you can boil alive if you just do it slowly because it doesn't know the temperature's changed. The Methodist Church has been in decline for 75 years, and most members of Methodist churches don't know it, or don't think their methods are wrong. They think it's the neighborhood or something else, and they're not aware that the way they're organizing their religious lives is contributing to the decline of the institution. And churches that are discovering how to have institutional controls that revitalize faith are the ones that are doing really, really well. I don't think Aldersgate knows how badly fragmented it is, how little we share a common faith, that we don't have a common mission, that whenever we talk about what we want to do in the future, our first question is, who are we going to offend? We ask, how can we make everybody happy, instead of what does the gospel require of us? And it doesn't allow us to be great. We're almost afraid to be great. Does that cover?
That's good. Methodist means mediocre. That's one of my slogans.
Becky, is your population racially integrated, or is it predominantly white?
It's predominantly white, but there's a lot more other not denominations, races and stuff coming in at this point. The black population's picking up, and the Asians are starting to come in. And, it's just something. It's based on the area too, as far as there's a lot of whites in that one particular area too. But we have an international fellowship meeting on Sunday nights that most of the people coming out are Muslim, and they're converting, and so that's another big one for us. Is
You love what you're building?
yes.
One of the excuses, if you will, that I often hear of churches in decline is that there are so many competing things, sports for kids and meetings here and meetings there, that you don't really have time for church. That doesn't sound like you all have that problem.
We have, there are families that, do disappear because the kids are in, soccer or whatever on Sunday morning, but then they're back Sunday night because the thing's over, or they're there Wednesday. So there's other times during the week that they can connect, and they still do. And there's Bible studies in people's homes. So there's lots of
question of expectation.
Yeah, it's still, the expectation is still there. Yes, absolutely.
I'll say the last question.
Me? I'm going to be the Debbie Downer and ask. Dennis just said, there's a lot of people here that don't know we're fragmented. Becky kind of alluded to the fact that we're fragmented. if we're fragmented, do we have any business then starting a new, planting a church if we're already, or is it, it's not about us, it's about who we need to reach, who needs us?
I mean, you can answer that. I would say that's part of this process.
Okay.
And I would also say that it's, there is unity across a greater part of the church than, it's like the squeaky wheel gets all like, so there's a lot of that too. That's kind of how I would answer that. So then, cherry on top, Becky visited this church before she went there. So that's like, what do you think?
Follow up to what you said about why then should we be doing this. This is exactly the right question the church should be asking.
I gave you the opportunity to.
The ability to say, this is what we believe, this is our mission, this is why we exist, has to start with some group within the congregation, and it will get traction. Because everybody's hungry for this. This is what they want. And the church's ability to say, this is why we're here, becomes magnetic for the rest of the congregation. If we wait until we get it right before we start moving, it means we don't get it. Moving is what it's about.
That would be fragmented.
Exactly right. It starts attracting, it becomes magnetic.
All right, so in the remaining time, before we break you up into your groups, what we want you all to do is to brainstorm a little how do we kill this church exercise. I want you to be blatantly obvious, or like honest. So these are just like highlights. I didn't want to give you a whole demographic report. We're just the zip code the church is in right now. The majority of families, the majority of people here are families with children. Most of them are well educated. Only 27.5% of the people in our zip code go to any church whatsoever. So that means 3/4 have no church home, have no religious background, have no religious language, they might define themselves as being a spiritual person. They might not be open to church at all. But we're in a community where only 1/4 goes to church. The projected population, there's like a 5 to 10% population decline projected over the next 10 years as the older residents die. And then that picks up again after that as they're replaced by people with children. And most families are not single parent households. You guys got that information? So now I want you to imagine that you were part of, say, Becky's church or another church. Imagine that you were part of a church that was going to plant a satellite across the street from us on Fort Hunt Road. I want you all to think, you can do it as a group, individually. Terry's going to pass out Post-it notes for you to do this. I want you to think of all the things you would do to put Mullersgate Church out of business. Because it's easier to step out of our shoes to see what a church, with those statistics in mind, what they would do to appeal to the 3/4 that we're not even going after right now. Does this make sense? And then I'll put up a little chart, and then you can put them on here based on ease of implementation and greatest impact. Does anyone have any questions? Be ruthless. If you've served in leadership on this in the church, use that frame of reference. If you're on staff, if you've been a lay person and been on staff, use that frame of reference. Dennis will give you, I don't know how much time.
A lot of those families don't go to church, but if your whole social world revolves around what those kids are doing, and if those kids are involved in something in the church, their parents are involved.
Yeah, because that's absolutely why we get against the other programs, whether it's school-related, church-related.
How much, we've never been here, but how much does church
This is what we've done 2 weeks of DBS. This summer we're doing one because of construction. Church that's going to happen. We do 2 weeks of school missions. We're doing 1 week high school missions. They do DBS. No, we don't have that. They don't.
I would say something like, she just got invited to the and it's like, you know, Monday through Friday, you're there, and you yeah, I mean, I think that would be attractive if there's all these families.
That's something Mike said, my kids just been stopped. We don't want to have to go up and that's the way you start running around. So what would be, so what would we say, kids, obviously.
I wrote somewhere else.
Let's just do about 20 classes.
It stopped small because it was serving I would take it for increase the quality of life.
Another great thing too. This was a great thing to go. I mean, it was another.
Doing okay?
You know, what keeps people going to the church? In fact, they've got scheduled things that, you know, they can have one-stop shop for their fellowship meeting. You know.
Yeah, we would go if I said need to be there.
Do you do a hit or do you have like 500?
Have all your stuff.
Every choir practice ended at
Dinner, nobody's going to show.
Yeah, I mean, there was a church in Fayetteville that had a music academy, so there were a lot of families that sent their kids to get instruction, and then, hey, I might just come here on Sunday.
No, was that staff led or was that lay led?
That, well, it was, think of it, no, it was hosted by the church, just like Christmas was hosted by the church.
Member involvement.
I will say what got us here before one of the other churches was the fact that the website actually existed. So,
Literally, Google.
well, when we move from post to post or whatever, we're going to, you know, look to see what the website has to offer or whatever else, and then we claim that we're going to try each different one to see what we stop on the first one, but, you know.
So we'll write that one about world-class website that offers opportunities there. We'll go on this statement for years.
Yeah, we compare the websites to see, if you tell me that you're offering things that we're looking for as a family, then we're going to try you first. Chances are that we're like that, or we're going to say, look, this doesn't look like it's a church.
So the website content driven, not snazziness or just the amount of stuff. It was good content.
It was a lower bar. we were looking for a program, really, so I'm going to look at it and see the location, because I don't want to have to, I know if I don't have to drive 20 miles to get somewhere, I'm more likely to do it more often, not just on something like last year.
Here was like, you know, you just do it over and over.
So I'm going to look at location first, and then I'm going to look to see if they offer the youth programs, such as like so it's content, and of course it's asking content. It's going to draw my eye to what I want to see for a ticket.
Well, I can tell you the first, I think I saw first, and I saw you had PBS, and
Like in
then,
a restaurant.
and I said, oh, PBS is full. So that's what we, pretty much, I showed him the website.
All over you.
So, we just have a morning people, right? You don't have any session.
There's an active trying to find out what that's called.
Okay.
But there's no like, there's not like 40 events. Yeah. There's basically like the one you can't get there. Parents can't get there. Get out of London. That's why.
Donate the money. And they'll say,
It's like, yes.
Yeah, right here. Well, no, there has to be, first of all.
They started from scratch. There's like, coming into basketball game, guys on stage, like
I'll say the true definition of talent is to play with really good original players. That's where all the hanging walls. I love like you can take a person that's
huge long line.
Yeah, that's it. You know, things that are good things that you different. What can we talk about? What can we talk about structure that gets about, you know, about faith and, I mean, if the gospel is really poignant, how do we?
Growing up, I played church flag football and church softball. From the age of 14 until
Career also you want to sure serve your
but there isn't one because it's a great way.
All right, we'll give you like 1 more minute, and then you. So, put your post-its based on ease of implementation and potential impact.
It's tied, ease of
That would be not
go. Hospitality.
Hospitality should have.
It's the entire church. The job. I'm sorry.
That's why.
Wow. That's a young family.
I mean, she's great.
Yeah.
After I had to cancel her, told her she called me the next day, gave me 3 full shots.
Every service you go
On her own.
find out, find out about them. They feel like they're welcome.
She should be a hospital.
We get rid of our coffee hours. We have not have a big room and people see it in corners.
Yeah, that's actually
Intimidating. It's not fun.
Are we supposed to record something here?
Last year, lucky we still let the Christmas. Don't just think that's the only reason we stay. Otherwise, I should.
No, I don't think so. I think it's already done.
That's where you need to have a kind of person where if that question ever comes up.
River, you say what you want.
I don't see any posters.
He's got 20 of them up there.
Some individuals came up with more than. Our ideas are more detail oriented.
Quality, that's right.
Yeah.
You're looking for impact,
Artists were good boys, look at quality, Jason. That one was free. We're no longer parents of non-communication. We're just starting to the church.
What I like is interesting.
And then once you're doing
Everything.
you don't remember what anybody said, but it was so like, you know, you just never read your notes. Why?
About 5 years ago, we took a meeting down there.
My weather twins, 3 daughters, another girl. I probably already. They just started turning the corner, you know?
So like, it's like, helping us to make it
And then they get about.
So hey, we're just like, you're going to go working up.
Then they go back down.
Or like, you get somebody who's running here, and he's like, hey, what's all these things, what do you want to get involved in?
I don't know how they started, whether they are or they just say that way. Never gone on all of your
But we don't need any.
you're touched by now, granted, I don't think it's like, takes the word apart. They did more, you're right, they were doing more domestic stuff, so still, to get people, it was never, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have $850 plus airfare to go.
All right.
Stop talking. I should have told you guys no cursive allowed.
No what?
No cursive allowed.
Oh my God.
So I see
Do you know reading them? I know you're writing.
make presence known in the community, market specific groups, sports and athletics, improve friendliness and openness of congregation, so be really friendly.
That should be kind of hard.
Aftercare, confirmation, keep up with current marketing trends, package the Bible differently, start a coffee shop, build a gym, dinners, daycare, door-to-door visits, outreach to specific neighborhoods, non-Sunday morning services, do not take on debt that overwhelms the church, encourage dead weight and complainers to leave church.
Go across the street to Aldersgate.
Provide families in need material and spiritual gifts, have ministries targeted to various ages, ask people what they want, be sensitive to the community's needs, more contemporary worship. That's just complete. I'll let you guys look at this later. But there's a lot of things up here about hospitality, more contemporary worship, improved communication and targeted marketing, things like that. Train the lady to speak their faith, things like that. Any questions? I'll take a picture of this and email it out.
After translating it all?
What's that?
After translating it all?
It's all online. All right, so for the rest of the time, or however long your group needs it, you guys can break up and have the conversations that you guys need to have following up last week. Dennis, is there anything else you want to add? Oh, wise and sagely one. When he laughs, it means he's like trying to think of what to say.
First. This is just like more information than you want, and it's just me venting, but I've been doing it like for 2 days, and I don't know what that is, and I feel
He's been in a
sad.
terrible mood. You guys, like, it's awful.
Yeah.
Is he preaching?
Who's preaching?
Not preaching Sunday, so be quiet.
Idolatry is anger. Except there really is something like that.
People say really nasty things about me and Jason behind our back within this church, and nobody stops them. Nobody says we don't do that in church. And so Becky came to like her first church council meeting and was shocked at the tone of voice we use with each other. So it's not just about how do we be polite on Sunday morning. How do we look friendly? That looking friendly doesn't get at what her congregation has. They actually love each other. They would never stand for somebody to say something about their friend that we allow to be said about each other here. It would never stand for it. And it's standing up for that not any opinion's okay. That there is a standard of love we have for each other that we won't stand for anything else. So that's just like a relief. So when you ask me what those things need to say, that's what's at the heart of it. That we have a standard for each other that's defined by love, and we just won't let anything else substitute for that.
And that gets back to what I think Keller's after. I mean, all the programs and marketing and methods, like if the gospel hasn't changed people's character and the character of the congregation, especially how used we are to be marketed to. Like, people can see right through that.
Yeah. Marketing techniques are nice, but people know when they're being sold. A genuine relationship, there's no substitute for it. How was that?
End of the rant.
That's the end of the rant. Thank you. I'll sit over here by myself for the rest of the night.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So now I'm going to start ranting this. So we're going to break up. Do what you need to do. Becky, you're free to leave. Thank you for joining us. You have a 3-hour Bible study now?
Thank you, Becky. Thank you so much.
Yay, Becky. Well done.
So what's the next thing?
I've updated my sheet on the online version.
Well, we just introduce ourselves again. It's something that's
I honestly did not get a chance to look at
Well, I think we both volunteer.
Yeah.
You know what I say. I was it's just having to sit down at the table together.
So I did.
So,
Churches that were here in 7, 9, and I also grabbed the ones that were no 3, 9. There's a church. A lot of the websites don't have all the data on them, right? So for all the churches.
Is there in there, Natalie, since I've had this year, we're new to the area, this is the last
One
year.
contact.
And I was actually,
The theme of my question was, hey, I'm in
I
the
just told him
area.
when he said Methodism is decreasing, I said, you got me on the same page.
Information on
And it's just, they don't really
thank you.
Oh, you actually said Boulder State is doing this. I didn't.
Yeah, so
I didn't say
I'll be here when I don't.
I didn't make it sound like I'm looking for a church, but I also
So
didn't,
when,
I didn't work so hard.
I just have one
So
Thursday.
easily, the way I phrased my question was, oh, this is a new person who's here and they're looking for a church. Several young churches, mostly non-denominational churches, had very enthusiastic responses on all the stuff they do and all this stuff. I had one church that had been in the area since
But I think it's a good place to stay.
their response was, why are you asking? What do you use this for? You can use this for what Jason was saying, I've been there for a while and starting to regulate it. Somebody asked these questions, I was like, not an opportunity.
Basically, what I did is take all the so all the basically, all the
Adult setting.
Yeah, basically just I said we don't have.
We don't have money here, but when I was going through it, I thought
Driving
and number 2, some of the things are the wrong information to be asked.
Parents' homework.
Like whatever you have an age,
And my wife goes,
like every church, and we went to the whole specific geographic area. They find some churches find,
Some do, I was reading some involved in this.
some find it as supporting missionaries and not necessarily going on the church. But it was also, to me, it just seems like continue
dead on arrival.
of people that judge about we can see if they have missions.
You might be right. They
You
might
know what I
have
mean?
their
I-
hands full taking care of what's within the walls of their church.
Yeah, or like Boy
Inside.
Scouts, like, I mean, and the thing is, like, a lot of the things I see when I look at it, like, they don't like, oh, that was in American churches, but then they have dance, and they have prayer ministry, and they have, like, music, we don't have, so they have all these categories. So we didn't even put on the category, but to them, they're so important, they're in every single African program. So it's like, okay, like, can we distill it down to like, the information is really important rather than the whole thing.
That's why I appreciate it.
I did a list of what I thought we should take out.
That's why I'm concerned about it.
But now we're well, once you get done doing this,
There are areas, I think we have, that are being well served by the church, and we don't need to then whatever the variables are, that equation, that on, you know, whatever, wherever they go, it doesn't say
Specific titles, congregation care coordinator. Someone has a pastor.
They will have a resident.
Do they have it? If someone has Stevens ministry,
They probably got 100
yeah, but some have Stevens there, some have Stevens there, but it's not a congregation care coordinator.
Resonating.
Well, they probably is like,
So we're at the conference. We had lots of people talking about so we came in, so I sent you all an email, hopefully you all got it. We talked about like mission plans, researching best practices and environment.
Yeah, that's a different type.
yeah, that's exactly it. It's a different title, but that's what it does.
So for that group, so the reason I'm doing this so much is because we're that you can and Carla both signed up for that group, and he's one of them there tonight. So they sent me an email and they were going to come tonight. So and then he said he was going to be part of our group. So I'm having anyone else that wants to help out with that. We can tell you the other four of them, and then you can go back and find them. So this is sort of like the best practices. Go do research. Go look at the lab, find things and ideas to bring back to the next one was actually design. We have a website development. Talk about Bill, who also is not here tonight, volunteered to be on that team to look at the layout, look at what would be the most technology, like how we design, develop applications for we were advised by our coach at some point in the future we'll decide, is this a separate website, or is it a brand? And then we talked about I would say your father. Figure out this off-site someplace else. And then John was coming up with an idea before we did the group. That was to look at the audio visual. We really want to be able to do world-class video presentations of worship services. the sound, both for where we're going to do the worship, but also to record.
Yeah, I think so.
It's over kids, and I didn't decide what
Exactly, all that kind of stuff, and having places to find.
They were much older, although my mother's in her mid-80s, and she will go Saturday before she not the they were very open about, that's a really value back.
So the issue came up is lots of times when you get your films on, it's darn as soon as we start performing. Real life, right? And broadcasting, so we have like a HDMI, July requires we don't pay copyright, so you have to think about that, cut the songs out of services.
Well, like Stevens ministers or like.
And then the last piece has the sort of communications part, so there's a branding and marketing, puts the brand on the website. But also how you reach Ken agreed to advise the group, they grew back to the house, and said she has to help out like this. And then I said I would try to help it anywhere I could, but I'd also bring it all together. So we started our
But I don't think we have to be specific.
So that was really one. And so,
I do. So I have, number one, I made there's a Google folder. All this stuff is on there. If you want to put stuff in there, you can. Everybody can create, everybody can edit. So if you want to go onto my documents and edit them, that's fine. So this is what I've come up with so far in terms of
I've only talked about Boy Scouts.
issues,
They do have
questions
categories.
that we have, how sensitive, what platform
Yeah, so I'm only reading the recommendations of the things I do.
create it, establish a separate website, or a website, technical issues, and then just some articles on redesign versus real line, social media.
Well,
It's probably good.
I'm so glad you're in charge of this.
Yeah, so like, the reason I want you all to see this is power of the church. Sometimes like, what here doesn't make sense. Let me know, or what that will know. I think something should be added, some added action areas. First, yes. And I'm working with a friend of mine who's a
What we're trying to gauge is strong
and then working on different service plans surrounding it. Our limited budget was to limited budget was
Well, there you are.
I don't know whether we are. Jason handed me a printout.
Most people will visit our website.
Because if you try and specify everything, it'll be so much different.
Yeah, so it'll tell you like, the things for online giving, that's the one.
There are a couple of reasons.
I'm inspired to read it. One time right there, you would have
It's great that you set it up through the website because if the other churches have done some online giving or automatic debit or whatever, then I have to call and get them to change. I will also say, we're going to run two websites.
For your phone, especially if we're going to reach the younger. We're in the process of writing the ultimately do talk now. Acquiring more graphic. From my favorite. And a lot more demand on.
But they weren't defined in the category.
Apple has some Apple has a lot of
They support, we can have it more, some more international companies that like don't necessarily go on a mission trip.
How would we define it?
As part of our plan, what we want to do is that's like a 5 to 10 so we want to do that. We want to have that ability to easy bar entry doors, as long as our doors are but we can offer this up to options. We're going to figure out so we don't have to be done with it next week.
The really interesting thing I found out today, I realized we use Alexio for our website. We use Constant Contact for yes, the patrons.
Where does that fit?
Alexa, so Alexa, and Access is also event scheduling. So Alexia, all of that in one shot.
Sorry, Jeff, otherwise it comes across as fake.
Well, I think that's what
That's right, the next thing, whereas. Here's that connects every aspect of from posting worship slides, worship videos, church, digital version of nursery care, where you use your Safeway Club card to scan into the nursery. It ties in on the screen. Everybody knows, it prints out a name tag. Yeah, or I have peanut allergies, and that way, we have a record of people, nursery workers may not be able to say similar to know who your child is. There's that, does the message. I agree, yeah. Does it really? Our website, they all
Because together, so can be in love.
What I've read about guidelines, it's a very recommendation, so there's nothing that says well, that has to happen.
Well, I'll say that. I really want to put it on. Be unbound by any and then when we get to like they want there's some things we'll don't practice on
I think we need to say, I don't want to say, I don't want it to be referred to apply to any faith, because it's so generic, that's something.
Which churches?
And all the whole thing.
Because that's really.
You're not going to knock out.
breakdown of something.
What does it
And
involve?
if you're interested in website development, let us know. We'll put you on that too. And so we'll keep conspiring with these folders. Let's say some of the work, like the visual work, some of the work we've done in the first. Let's say like
All of your outside.
because that will help us part of the way. So the website development team is now to
But I think it does.
There's certain parts of it that I,
It would be a free which is actually colors. They have that's something great. There's just so much what we're going for. That's not that's kind of what
And if it's a list as long as your arm, then that church has a lot of.
just we have to have ways to remember front, all that, do some
But, you know,
Not just some barriers, you know,
Yes. Seeing content from the church, or is it more for? In my mind, you know, it ought to be a place where parents will ask for a public place where they can sign up for a committee, a place where they can adjust their tithing if they want to. If that's,
it would be all of that just from your
Would it basically, kind of, I was asking my question, would it basically be like an version of the website for a more interactive version?
And so
It would be right now, if you go to our website, like from your phone,
You're gonna help us, help me find it.
yeah.
Some things are easy, some things are hard.
Like, we really wanted to get rid of something because there's a website platform WordPress, and that's most websites are on it. They actually have some, it's called holding you back. That's a website. You don't have to necessarily need it.
no, but there's stuff about our area here.
What it is, I've hired like apps. So like I work for galleries, so you go in and they have a list of what they ask for. So yeah, it is.
We got demographics.
It may not be it's a WordPress based, so, I know Jason does WordPress, I think Martin does WordPress. What you can do is you can either create your own scratch website, graphics wise, layout wise, or you can purchase a free template. Themselves.
And
I had to work on it.
Okay, so we know.
No, so we hired a company called Church Life.
Signs in your congregation. Wow.
Margaret,
Their marketing is.
yeah.
how are you?
And they are, it's all in the application.
Trying to kill her rather than just make her sit over.
So when I noticed, you know,
laying this out and figure out like a structure for the next step. That's not your plan?
If we want to, we can also, if you all find websites that you want to show to us, we can do all that. We can do all that for free.
I'm really good at this.
Yeah, like the one in here, the GraceDC.net, is a great example of, so Grace DC is like the mother church, and they bring the training built set up their Saturday series. So it's a really good example of multi-site congregation with two
Professor, some kind of guy who writes a book, comes and we do a
they
survey.
each talk to each other.
Right.
But it's not like grace.gc.net slash.
And so then, in all of the small groups, you go over that stuff.
There is. It's really nice. I'm trying to get all my dollars.
Small study.
It's AUC 1, 2, 3 period.
So then we have to,
AUC 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, then you have to get on the phone with someone.
That's right.
And it's fine.
Special character, numbers, letters.
That's, I mean.
I can never, I mean,
How do we?
I've been here.
I put everybody that has small group engaged, you know.
What we like to have is input.
You just change it from like study
Because that'll be part of our conference.
Be everything.
If nothing else, I'll have rocket Wi-Fi.
Right.
Where sign up for like,
Well, I say like this, I think we're we have everybody's getting, we got Google Photos, we got share on, collaboration with that.
One is they get together outside of worship,
Sundays have a great night.
pray together, study the Bible, do things they want to do in worship. And then you have in the church that have your church together.
It's safe. It's virtual.
Very good.
All right. I'm sorry you've been angry for 2 days.
I'm good.
Other than that, yeah, that would be translated by when you want to happen. Because I was looking at the first one, we had the little class, but there was more of them in the